Thank you, Tiffany.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, Terry, you want to start?
Sure, thank you. So if you do roll call, or
Sure.
thank you.
Joe Piscineri,
I'm here, thanks.
Brittany D'Alaconte,
Here.
Barry Lind,
Here.
Cynthia Koza, Jonathan Hayes,
Here.
Carla Berg, Terry Dillon,
Here,
Brett Yancey,
Here.
Eric Adams.
Here.
okay, thank you. And now, are there any changes to the minutes that Tiffany has sent out? I didn't have any either, so can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Yeah, I can.
Thanks, Barry.
I can second
Get a
it.
second?
Yeah.
Thank you, thanks. Okay. Next on the agenda is any business from the audience. Do we have an audience?
We have two. Let me turn on the, oops. Let me turn on the ability to raise hands. Oh.
Okay. Barry, how does it feel to just sit back?
All right, so if you want to read the script.
Sure. Okay, public testimony will be received during business from the audience. As a reminder, the meeting is being recorded. The committee will listen to your comments, but will not respond to public comment until the committee response portion of the meeting agenda. Meeting minutes will be taken by staff and forwarded to the city manager and city council. Members of the public can always send written testimony to the committee or city council. As we begin our meeting tonight, I would ask members of the audience to please keep yourselves on mute until you are called on to provide public testimony. And public testimony will allow speakers 2 minutes each for a total of 20 minutes. If you are joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak either of those times, please use the raised hand feature to make the request. You will be called on when it is your turn to speak. Please identify your name, Springfield ward number, and the subject you would like to speak about. For people calling in by phone only, you are in listen mode only and cannot be called upon. Please go ahead.
Well, Terry, at this time, nobody is raising any hands.
All right. Well, thank you. And then we'll go on to, we don't have to do the committee response, obviously. And now we'll talk with Chief Scheer.
Good evening, everybody. It's good to be back with you again. It's been a month or so. I think early December is the last time we chatted. We got a few things to update you on. One of the things I'm excited about is Tiffany Monroe. She applied for and was accepted to a cohort for the International Public Safety Leadership and Ethics Institute. And she is currently in a program, correct me if I'm wrong, Tiff, I think it goes through May, where there's a number of different times you go back and meet with the cohort for multiple days. And basically the gist of this program is it kind of goes over concepts of leadership and ethics for public safety members, and it brings together leaders in different public safety organizations, you know, fire, corrections, law enforcement, to kind of talk about the mutual concerns and issues that they all face. And it's I think a really great opportunity for Tiffany. So I just want to recognize her for getting into that course and representing SPD to a very high standard. I have no doubt. You'll be running circles around everybody in that course.
Congrats, Tiffy.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Brian Austin, who I think some of you know, is our animal control officer, who's pretty amazing, and he's been recognized around the state for his great work. He was just elected the Oregon Animal Control Council president for the entire state, which is a great accomplishment. I think it speaks to the good work that he does and the program that he's built. But along with that, if some of you know Corrine Smith, who's one of our volunteers, she's volunteered in the animal control office for at least 1 day a week, maybe 2 days a week for a long time. She was also recognized as the animal control volunteer of the entire state. So that's another great accomplishment for one of our volunteers. So I just want to recognize her from that. On January 17th, we hired some new folks, did some promotions. We promoted Detective Kyle Potter to sergeant. And if you remember, Kyle, I think, came to our last meeting and talked about the bias crimes.
Mhm.
So that's somebody I think that you all know, but we've promoted him to sergeant. He is going to manage our fatal accident investigation team. He's going to oversee our community service officers, and he also is a watch commander where he runs one of the patrol shifts. So he's been doing that for about 3 weeks now. We're super excited to get him out on the street. Sergeant Brian Keedle, who had been in patrol, we created a position called the training sergeant. And so what Sergeant Keedle's role is going to be is he is in charge of everything DPSST related. He is in charge of all the documentation for all the training for the entire department. But most importantly, he's been tasked with creating a comprehensive training plan for the year for the department to make sure we meet not only the requirements from the state DPSST, but that we work towards some other more advanced trainings and some things I've talked about in the past. And I think one we're going to be able to pull off hopefully in 2023. It's called ABLE training, active bystander for law enforcement. And what that does, it's a national program, and it's a way to better equip our officers to be able to essentially intervene if an incident is going in a direction that it should. We're all human. We all, but our emotions get the better of us sometimes. So it's a way to equip officers where they can intervene and help de-escalate a situation with the other officers that are around them. So I'm excited to be able to hopefully roll that out sometime in 2023. Another thing that we're doing, which is kind of interesting, is the physical testing that people have to go through to get hired as a police officer is it's a state designated testing process. It's called the ORPAT. There's all these different obstacles and some machines and all that. And it's kind of, there's only a few of those setups around the state. And so whenever you're trying to run tests, you have to try to schedule it around when that stuff is available. Human Resources was able to identify funding to, we are actually going to be able to buy our own equipment so we can set up that physical testing portion here in town and have it up all the time. So one, that's going to let us run tests hopefully more often, which is going to help our recruiting and hiring efforts. But two, something else it's going to do is that is a barrier for some folks is to get past that physical assessment. And it's difficult sometimes to just show up cold and run something that you've never run before. You haven't had a chance to practice it, really prepare for it. So what I'm hoping is we can get that set up in a location in town where it's up all the time. And then we can open it up on different times for potential applicants to come, run it, practice it, get better at it. And I think it's a way for us to kind of reduce the size of that barrier some people have to getting into the hiring process of a police officer. So I think it's a good thing for a lot of reasons. And I think what I'm also very excited to talk about is my new deputy chief, Jamie Resch, who's sitting next to me. She started at the same time we promoted Kyle back on the 17th. I've known Jamie for probably the better part of 2 decades. We've worked together for a long time at our previous place of employment. She was my boss. I don't know how many people would hire their boss to come work for them, you know, that may or may not happen sometimes, but she brings a tremendous amount of experience, both at the leadership perspective, running an organization and dealing with challenges. She's got a demonstrated history of being very engaged in her community in a lot of different ways. And frankly, she's very well respected by the line level officers that go out and do the work every day. So she brings a lot to the table. She's going to essentially, well, I have responsibility for the whole department. When it comes to essentially the police work, it's the jail, the investigations, and the patrol functions are all going to, on the org chart, go directly up to her. And then I'm going to be able to focus more on professional standards, hiring, recruiting. Business services manager will report to me as Jess, all the budget. And then that's going to allow me to be hopefully much more engaged both in the community and internally to some degree. But it's going to position me to where I can think not just about the daily putting out fires and the problem solving that just comes up all the time, but I'm hoping I can start focusing more at a strategic level on where is SPD going to look a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. Work with the city budgeting office and just do those kind of things to try to set this PD up and the community up for greater success in the future. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. I'm super happy Jamie's here. And with that, I want to just turn it over to her for a minute so you can kind of introduce yourself.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you all. Hopefully one of these days it will again able to meet you. I'm meeting everybody who wants for coffee. So if anybody is interested in that outside of meetings, I'm totally happy to do that just to get to know as many people as I can. As the chief said, I do come from the Portland Police Bureau. I did 24 years there and held multiple different positions and roles and stuff, which I'd be happy to share if you have questions about that. Very happy to be here. Everybody has been more than welcoming, which is awesome. The officers have been asking a lot of questions. They're super engaged. They have lots of great ideas. So hopefully I can work to help make that happen. The Portland Police Bureau does have a lot of advisory councils. So I do have, quite a bit of experience in engaging different community groups, and I hope to do that here as well. So if there's other opportunities to do that, please let me know. I do like to be involved in the community, and my plan is to get to know as many people as possible. I think it's really helpful, not only for me and the community, but just the officers and the department as well. So if there's any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them. One of the things that's come up a lot, people ask, I am moving down here. My husband will retire in June, and then we will permanently move down here. So this will be our home for hopefully a while. Puts us kind of in the middle. We have family in Southern Oregon and then family in the Portland area. So it cuts that Southern Oregon drive in half. So I'm happy about that. But yeah, if there's any questions that people have right now, Joey, I see your hand is up. But if there's any other questions, please feel free to ask me anything.
Joe?
Yeah, this is back when the chief was commenting about things, and I had a question for the chief in regards to, you're talking about you created a new position called a training sergeant, and if that's the case, when did we lose the training sergeant that was at the department previous to that?
What we had was, it was called the administrative sergeant. They
Right.
took care of vehicles, they took care of uniforms, they basically did a lot of, they took on a lot of roles that I think are more appropriate for a non-sworn person. When we have a sworn police sergeant, I think there's certain things that we need to utilize their skill set for, and there's other things that administrative sergeant was doing that we have parsed out to some other officers. And so that position is essentially the one that we changed the name to the training sergeant and kind of shifted the work to do something a little different, and then spread out some of that workload among some other folks.
So the person that was doing the administrative end of things, they're still there doing that administrative stuff?
No, they're not. We have 9 sergeant positions. 8 of them essentially are what I would call police positions, watch commander, detectives. We have 1 that's in professional standards. And then we had that 1 administrative sergeant. That administrative sergeant is now called the training sergeant and has a little different focus. But we're essentially still vacant 1 sergeant position. We have 9 authorized positions. We've only filled 8 of them right now. We can't fill the 9th one until we get personnel staffing up. So we didn't add an additional position. We basically realigned the duties a little bit and changed the name of it.
So which one heads up internal investigations? Is it now relegated to a lieutenant and not a sergeant?
Yes.
Or
Sergeant Massey still does that. He's been doing it for at least 2 years. He's still doing it.
so what position does he have then?
Professional standard sergeant position.
So that's a different sergeant position?
Yeah,
There's
Joe,
professional.
the administrative sergeant position has been vacant since the sergeant that was in that position retired probably about 1.5 years ago.
Okay, so then we have, if I get like,
I can list them out for, we have 9 authorized sergeant positions.
okay,
One is currently vacant right now. That vacancy will go into patrol once we fill it. So we have
Okay.
9 authorized, we have 1 vacant, so we have 8 sergeants today.
Okay.
1 sergeant is that training sergeant. 1 sergeant is the professional standards, internal affairs sergeant. 1 is in detectives, and all the remaining ones are in patrol.
so basically there's 5 in patrol, is that what you're saying?
Yes, and there will be 6 once we're able to fill that other one.
And then the internal affairs sergeant works directly under the patrol lieutenant or under this?
The Office of Professional Standards, which includes Sergeant Massey, who has accountability and internal affairs and all that.
Right.
also now has that training sergeant. They both fall under the professional standards division. They both answer directly to me.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Chief, I have a question. Congratulations to both Brian and Corrine. How did they get nominated? I assume it's from internal, and then how does it go out?
Well, I think they get nominated by people that are part of the statewide council.
Okay.
I don't think those nominations even came from within SPD. I think they came from that council, and
Oh, okay.
I'm assuming Brian probably nominated Corinne to the statewide council and had to make a pitch, and she competed against other folks, I think. But I'm
Okay.
sure Brian was nominated by other members of the group, and he held the statewide conference here last year and did a tremendous job. And there was people all over the state here for that. He's really built a great program.
Yes, he has. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on with business from the committee then. First of all, I'd like to introduce Brett Yancey. He's new to our group. Brett, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, first of all, thank you. I apologize for missing the last meeting. I was out of town. So as you said, my name is Brett Yancey. I'm the Chief Operations Officer of Springfield School District. I have been in Springfield for 21 years. My connection to the Springfield Police Department is really the liaison between the school district and the police department. So I do a lot of work with our school resource officers, kind of the administrative side of Springfield Police Department. And, I'm excited to be a part of this. Jenna McCauley was, I think, our previous designee, and she has moved on to a different district in a different role. And the alignment actually is probably more appropriate to fall under somebody with my responsibilities, as I do have more of the police department connections and liaison work. Really excited to be a part of this. I tell everybody that asks me about our relationship with the police department. We have an amazing relationship with the Springfield Police Department. We really view them as a valued partner. We have just the utmost respect for our school resource officers and the work that they do and the connections they make with kids. And we're really fortunate to have them. I know that's been questioned in other communities, but in Springfield, it is a priority for the school district. So again, thank you. I'm happy to answer questions. I've been around for a while. Congratulations, Jamie. I met you at your swearing in, and I'm really excited for your addition. It was a pleasure to meet you, and Chief Shearer, I'm getting to know him more and more. And it's again, I can't speak highly enough about our police department at this point in the direction that they're going. So thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Okay. We have the faith community position is open now until February 10th. I understand we may have one person that might be interested in it. Barry, do you know anything about that? I believe
I've talked to an individual that was actually looking into it. He was someone I was thinking about prompting to apply for the position, and he actually that day had been looking on the website for something to get involved in, and he thought this might be of interest. So in the faith community, we don't call that a coincidence. So you can refer to that as you want, but I'm hoping, Joe, I don't know if you got a chance. I had asked Joe to maybe follow up with him and invite him to consider applying. Wonderful pastor in town, and would be a great addition if that works. So I understand he would need to apply, but we do have one I think is interested, and I'm hoping that'll happen.
okay, thank you.
Well, we've been playing unsuccessful phone tag for a week now, so I haven't been able to speak to him yet, but he's responding back, which is a good sign.
Do you know if he's applied? And I can follow up tomorrow.
I don't. If you could reach out to him, Barry, let me know too, and we can talk this weekend.
I've received no applications. They usually send them to me as they get them, and I have not received any applications yet.
Great, okay. I'll
Thanks,
follow up.
Tim. Thanks, Barry. Okay, we've started we have a subcommittee made up of Brittany, Carla, and myself to do the annual report for City Council. We did meet, and we're on our way to getting a version that we'll present to everyone here. We have another meeting. We'll meet with the City Council, I believe, was it March 10th, Tiffany?
April 10th,
April 10th.
yes.
Okay, so as soon as we get our pieces put together and in a draft form, we'll present at one of these meetings. Okay.
I think, oh yeah, maybe Brittany's gonna say what I was gonna say.
I think
Go
so.
ahead,
One
Brittany.
thing too, just to add, thank you for that summary, Derry, was that we are looking for solicitations from the committee for the next steps and discussion section. It's the same
That's
kind of
right.
section that we had at the end of the last annual report that we gave. And so if you all have ideas for what you'd like to include in there, feel free to email them to us, or if you have them right now, you can just tell us. We can also add them after you have a chance to look at the full report, because I know that'll probably generate some thought too, but just wanted to put that out there and let folks know that we are, would love to hear from you.
Okay, thanks, Brittany. Okay, we're down to our policies. We have two policies this time. 1.1.2, the Code of Ethics, and 1.1.3, the purpose and values. So, Chief, do you want to talk about these?
Sure. Like we've talked about in the past, we are currently going. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Like we've talked about in the past with our accreditation process, we are currently going through all of the policies, and these are two policies that will be rewritten. When it comes to 1.1.2, the oath of office and code of ethics, basically it just formalizes the process for how we swear in a member of the police department, a sworn member of the police department. It has the actual oath of office that's given by the judge. It kind of outlines the procedures of who has to be there, who has to sign it, just formalizes how you get sworn into the Springfield Police Department. The code of ethics and the Springfield Code of Ethics and the law enforcement code of ethics, those are things that they sign off on. They go into their personnel file. And just like the laws of the state, just like our policies, these are things that you have to follow as a police officer. And if you violate these, that's something that we take very seriously and can result in discipline up to and including termination. So it's just another way to paint the picture of why we do the job that we do, the importance of the job, the expectation of this community. And these are things that we cannot violate in order to maintain the public trust. The other policy, which is very similar and kind of tied to it, kind of has our mission, vision, values, and something that I basically over the last week just begun working on. Now that I've got Jamie here, this is one of the things I can focus on. I want to totally revisit the mission, vision, values for the department. I'm in the process of identifying a team of people in SPD that can help with that. And then I'm also going to need some community stakeholders to help with that. So I think this committee in particular is somebody we're going to be reaching out to for assistance in that. So we can kind of have a joint agreement on the values that kind of define why we do the work that we do every day. And it's something that everybody can play a role in creating. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about these specific policies. But at the same time, they're on the list to totally go through and revamp. So if you think there's things that are definitely missing from here, or you want to include it in the new one, I would love to hear any suggestions you might have.
Okay, thank you. All right. How about Joe?
I think actually Brett was first.
Oh, I can only see part of the screen now. Okay, Brett, hi.
Hi, thank you. So obviously I'm new to the committee. My question is that I'm assuming that these are very consistent among departments across the state, across the country. I did note that a prior chief's name was on this, so I'm assuming that was developed before Chief Shearer got here. Is this consistent with other departments and other communities, or is this more community driven? Community value driven? Just out of curiosity.
I think the oath of office and code of ethics is very similar. I mean, there's a state code of ethics. The oath of office is very similar across the board. I mean, there might be slight changes from agency to agency, but that's all very similar. But when it comes to mission, vision, values for a department, they're all over the board. I mean, that is something that can really capture a particular department, its culture, the community expectation of that department. And so most agencies put that, it's readily accessible on their website. So I mean, you could sit down and start Google any police department you want, and probably the first thing you're going to find is kind of the mission, vision, values for those departments. And you're going to see they're all across the board as to what's included. And probably the same way with school districts.
Yeah, no, thank you. Just out of curiosity.
Joe?
Thank you. I didn't know, Chief, if you were looking for any type of add-ons or something to consider on these at this time, or is that later?
Well, if anybody on the committee has input that I can make notes of right now,
Oh, yeah.
I'd be glad to take them, but we will absolutely visit it later too, because it's going to be a process to change this. It's not just something that we're just going to draft and put out. There's going to be more input after today.
Okay, well, I was looking at the, under page 1 of 1.1.3, when it's under policy, where it has those 7 bullet points.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking, it's very inclusive, but it almost is crying out to me to have something that states or somewhere in the policy that states that we want to have a special attention to our vulnerable population, or to a special protection of our vulnerable people. And I know we're supposed to protect everybody, but it seems those are the people that are victimized most frequently are, our aged folks, our people with disabilities, are, that population is never seen it. I've seen, as you know, a million policies, and it just seems like that is always lacking. And that's always kind of bugged me in the back of my mind, that I think that population deserves to be called out specifically, that we're going to watch out for you if you are vulnerable. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Yeah,
Am I getting too mushy?
No, that totally makes sense. I couldn't agree with you more. When I read this policy, I mean, in all honesty, when I read this policy, it seemed to me like it was probably something that was written a long time ago. And there's a lot of terms that I would include in a new one. I mean, there's no mention in here about building community trust, legitimacy, any of those kind of things that I think are just so to an effective police department. So this is one that I can see looking. Well, the job is to prevent crime, recover and return property. I mean, it's not that those things are incorrect. Right. This job is way more complicated today than it probably was when this was written.
But I mean, these look familiar to when I attended the Basic Police Academy 180.
Exactly. There's a lot of policies that look like that. This is a big job.
And that goes back a ways. Yeah. So yeah, it'd be great if we can maybe bring that population up to the front, or so it's always in our mind and never just forgotten.
Yeah, great points.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
I just wanted to add thanks, Derry, that I second both of what you said, that Councilor Pichinieri and Chief Fury, you both kind of read my minds on that, and I'm excited to see how this evolves going forward.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Anything to share from the committee? I'd like to welcome Jamie to our committee. Nice to have you here, Jamie. Brittany?
I did want to bring up some community concerns I've heard lately about an interaction between a community member and an SPD officer that was broadcast on KEPW a few days ago. And I'm sure, I see Chief Shearer nodding, so I'm sure he's aware of this. And so I think I have 2 primary questions related to that incident, which is one, I know the camping ordinance that's currently in place in Springfield violates state and federal law, and folks have until July, and I know council is working on it to fix that. But I'm wondering what SPD is doing to start prepping officers for that change. And then I'm slightly concerned because I know I've seen this officer's name come up in 2 other lawsuits that I've reviewed in regards to SPD. And I'm just wondering, I've heard a lot of concern from community members about kind of what the limit is here. And I know we've talked about disciplinary action, but maybe if you can provide more context for that, Chief, around why somebody who kind of has this history is still interacting with people in this way.
Those are great questions. I know you're correct that the city is currently getting guidance from council, I think, as to what the new ordinance or what the new rules here in the municipality will look like moving forward. And we're kind of just in a holding pattern to see what that is. So we know how to kind of guide the officers' actions moving forward. But maybe Councilor Pictionary can weigh in a little more on that, but I know that's something that's at the front of mind for city council and the elected officials. When it comes to talking about this recent incident, we take the behavior of the officers very seriously. We have policies that have to be followed. I know it's concerning and the name has come up in the past. And so this is something that we're looking at, we're taking very seriously. And I can't go any more detail than that, but we are very aware of it and we're looking at it. We will address it accordingly. And I can't really say any more than that right now, but that's what we're doing.
No, I appreciate that, Chief. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Brett.
I think Joe's comment may be related to that. So let me press pause, let him talk, and then come back to me, please.
Okay, Joe.
Yes, thank you. I'll speak about the camping thing just briefly, but yeah, the council, we are literally right in the middle of that. It's not a shallow pool to jump into. It's quite deep, and that we want to do things correctly. We're looking at, the entire council is looking at what parts of the city properties are. We have partners, and Eric can jump in here too. We've got partners that have got publicly owned lands, but they're not city property. It's Willamette Lane property. And then we have school property. So all those are integral in that. And I think, Chief, you can, I don't know whether I raised the subject when you were present or not, or I threw you under the bus at the time. I don't know, but I did specifically state at one of these meetings that I've been going to, there's been several and there's going to be several more. It's a lot of work. It's a heavy push, but I did state in one of those meetings that it's probably the key element in that area, the camping thing going on, is that we need to make sure that all of the police officers are getting that information disseminated correctly, and also training on how to best deal with that population. So it's not like we're just going to, you can't just switch and say, okay, we're going to change this ordinance and it's all going to work out great, and not tell the people with the boots on the ground on the history of it. There's got to be some good training behind it. And I think those areas, I'm familiar with what you're talking about, but I think those areas will improve as long as it's done on multiple levels. So it's reinforced by by our council, and it's reinforced by codification. And then and I'm happy to see, by the way, I forgot to mention that, Chief and Deputy Chief, that the placement of a training sergeant will now be able to take this and then properly disseminate it through the troops. Because I got to tell you, in that world, working in it for so many years, and the chief, and I'm sure that the deputy chief is aware as well, is that it seems like not all the players get the word. They don't get the memo. And those are the ones that have to be identified, that's saying, okay, did you not get this memo? And that goes back to, with the training officer's function, is that, okay, this is our curriculum, this is what we're training. And oh, by the way, we're going to document who all got that training and who still needs it. And so that short list of who still needs it needs to be checked off at some point instead of lost in the waves. So I think you're right on the money. I mean, I think everybody is. It's so complex, but yes, it's not being ignored. We have no choice. We can't ignore it. We're going to be moving forward with it. And we're going to be, there's a lot of question about Willamette Lane. It's like they're kind of under different rules, and it's kind of like, okay, they got their own land. So that's a lot of legal stuff that the attorney's really gonna have to settle out on. You gotta worry about the safety of the campers. Are they in the right of way? Are they in traffic? And, all those different things. So hopefully I didn't try to muddy the waters, but I mean, hopefully that helps both the chief and the rest of these folks here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Thank you. Brett?
Yeah, so thank you. I just wanted to, I don't know what exactly we're supposed to update, so I figured I'd just provide an update from the school district on some of the ways that we're continuing to partner with the police department. And I think it's important for the community to know. So we do have, just like Willamette Lane, we do have a lot of properties around the community. We also have vacant buildings around the community, and one of those vacant buildings is Mohawk Elementary. Even though it's outside of the city limits and LCSO would respond to that, we are making, and it kind of piggybacks on the idea of a training sergeant. So we are partnering with Springfield Police Department and making Mohawk Elementary School available for a lot of the Springfield Police Department trainings. I know that they've been out there with active shooter trainings. They've been out there with a number of things, and we're going to continue partnering with them. So I think as community members ask, what are you doing with Mohawk? What are you doing with this building? What are you doing with that building? We are interested. I see Mr. Hayes is on here. It looks like you're with Eugene Springfield Fire and Life Safety. We would love to partner with you guys on more training as well. I think it's important that we kind of band our resources together and also get our fire, life safety, and police force into our current schools at times when students aren't there, because we want you to know our schools. We want you to know our floor plans. We want you to know access points. And so obviously the chief and deputy chief are aware of this, but I think it's important for the committee to know that we are actively seeking opportunities to get our partners into our buildings for training opportunities. And if you have community members asking, please share that with them.
Thanks, Brett. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Hi, Barry.
If I could go back just for a second, I'm not aware of the situation, Brittany, you were mentioning, but I appreciate Chief you speaking about wanting always to build trust with the community. So I'm wondering if whenever, I understand also you can't speak too much about an officer that some folks in the community have concerns. So when it is resolved, how is that reported back to folks so it's known that, oh, something was done, whether they agree with what you did or not? That isn't as important to me as at least being able to say, yes, this was paid attention to, and this is the result. What is the process by which that happens?
Good.
That's a great point, and I'm glad you brought that up. I have a presentation, a quarterly update to City Council on, I think, February 21st. And there's 4 or 5 topics I'm going to be talking about. And that entire process is one of the things I'm going to be presenting to council. I know we've talked about our use of force data and all that, and the IA Pro and all the software. And we did the use of force report last year for the first time. It was very comprehensive, a lot of great information in that we're able to kind of analyze and identify trends. Well, using that same software then for 2022, we've now created essentially a complaints report. So we will be able to report out on all the different complaints, how many there were, the findings that were rendered at the end, the different categories of complaints. And so that's something we're going to be, we're still finalizing that report, but the plan is to be able to share that at the February 21st council meeting. And we're also going to talk about how we've implemented some new measures to kind of close the loop with complainants. Because one of the things we heard from community is like, hey, I make a complaint, then I never hear back. I don't know what happened. So we've implemented some ways that we are going to notify them when we take their complaint, like, hey, we hear you, here's the dates, here's what's expected to be done. After a certain amount of time, they'll receive another notification if we need to make an extension on it. So they'll be notified in the middle with an estimated completion date. And then when it's done, they're also going to get a written letter from professional standards outlining what the finding was and the resolution of that case. And so those are all things that we're just finalizing now, but we're going to be sharing those at our quarterly update on February 23rd.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Cindy.
Hi, I'm new, so I don't know if everybody remembers me from last time, but
Yeah.
I actually was trying to figure out how to do the complaint process. In the last month, we had a lot of interactions with the police. I have a caregiving agency and we work with adults with developmental disabilities. And I have a lot of staff, and for some reason, this last month, we've had a lot of interactions with the police, but I asked an officer, like, how do I make a complaint? And he texted me the non-emergency line. And so when I called the non-emergency line, I was kind of like, what? Press 1 for cahoots, press 2 for records. And I was like, I didn't think I was given the right information. So I reached out and I eventually figured out that that was the right route to go to make a complaint. But I think maybe we could improve that process or make it a little bit clearer, or the police officers might be able to explain like, hey, press 1 or whatever. Because I wasn't even sure how to do that. So.
Thanks for bringing that. That's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. But yeah, what happens is when you call records and say, I want to make a complaint, then they'll get a sergeant, they can take the complaint over the phone. People can come into the front desk and file a complaint. You can file a complaint on the website. There's a number of different ways to do it, but I hear what you're saying where you hear that message, it probably would be nice to have one of the choices like, hey, if you want to file a commendation or a complaint, click 3. So the least you know.
Yeah, or the officer could have maybe told me that too. But yeah.
Okay, that's good information. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just real quick, that phone tree is really new to us. We're still working through the quirks of it, and yeah, it's been interesting.
Thanks, Cindy. Thanks, Tiffany. Joe?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to get into anybody's business, whatnot, but in the past, there's been other departments had policies that if someone made mention of wanting to make a complaint, then whoever the staff person that hears that made mention of making a complaint, that staff person was required to make the connection at that time, or as far as going up the chain of command saying, I have this person, this is their contact, and they would like to talk to somebody in regards to a complaint or someone's behavior. And so that basically put that in, as we affectionately call, putting the poop in that person's pocket. And then they had to respond to that or have some sort of, that triggered a response from a supervisory level person. So that's what, I've seen work in the past, and I'm not sure what Springfield's practice is, but it may be something that's worth looking at, saying, okay, if we have someone that wants to issue a complaint, whatnot, it's not a deflection or defer, unless obviously it's a safety issue at the time. They can't deal with that because of safety issue. But if they don't have a safety issue, it was rules, requirements that it's like, okay, I need to contact the supervisor myself and put them in contact with this person. That seemed to work very well.
I appreciate that. That's interesting. Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. Anybody else?
I could add a couple more things if
Okay,
off topic.
go ahead.
So I am really involved with the deaf community, and I reached out to them after getting involved with this council, and I asked them if they had any thoughts or concerns or anything that they would want me to bring up in this council. And they were just really, they were happy that I asked, and they also had a lot of questions like, what are police officers trained on? Are they aware about the nuances with people that are deaf and how that affects when they're out in the community, it's kind of a different reaction. And so they were just kind of curious what kind of training, if it even gets mentioned, stuff like that. And potentially if there's ever like an opportunity to do training or outreach to that community, I have a connection there and I think it might be really helpful. So yeah, I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Well, thanks for that. I would have to go back and look and see what kind of training over the years officers have had here specifically in dealing with people that are hearing impaired. To answer your question about outreach opportunities, 100%. We want to outreach. If there's a group that wants outreach and wants to interact with us, we're looking for that all the time. So I really appreciate you bringing that to the table. And you can email that to me directly, and we can set that up here at the PD to try to make something happen. That's great.
Cool.
One of the things I've done since we got here is we issued every single police officer a smartphone. So as I'm thinking with people that are hearing impaired in particular, now we have an instant ability to message and, you know, show stuff back and forth. I don't know if that's best practice or not necessarily, but that's
Actually,
something.
it is. Yeah, it is. And there's like certain apps, like if they already have the app downloaded, it's super helpful. That's how a lot of people who are deaf communicate regardless. And I think just even sharing that information with the community would really shed positive light that you guys are doing something like that. I think it'd be really helpful.
Yeah, feel free to email me any contact info you have and we can try to set something up.
Thank you. Eric? Do you have your hand up, Eric?
I do. Thanks, Terry. Yep.
Yeah.
Several things. One, just wanted to extend a welcome to Deputy Chief on behalf of Willamette and an invitation to, when you have time, come take a tour of our parks. Happy to arrange that for you when you've got the opportunity. And then Chief, for the ORPAT test, the physical test, if you're looking for space to be able to set up those courses, let me know. We could probably talk about opportunities for that within the parks or elsewhere. Wanted to reiterate and echo Brett's comments about our appreciation for the school resource officers. We've been relying on them quite a bit lately in the last month or so, particularly Officer Amundsen has been of great help. So just want to pass that along to you, as well as Officer Austin. We've had some animal control needs lately, and he's been fantastic. So thank you for that. Other housekeeping items, I just want to put out for everyone's awareness. We currently have a vacancy on our board of directors, and we're currently accepting applications to fill a temporary term. Board of Director Bean had to step down unexpectedly, and so we're looking to fill her position. So if anyone's interested, please check our website. And then, gosh, there was one more thing. Oh, just to follow up on Councilor Pictionary's comments about the camping ordinances. So just to confirm, we are coordinating very closely with City Council and city staff in looking at state statute as well as recent case law and how that applies to special districts, park and recreation districts in particular. And I've been attending council work sessions and council meetings to make sure that we're communicating well about that with our board of directors, and they're aware of the issue as well, and being advised by our own legal counsel. So if any of you or other members of the community have questions about those efforts, please don't hesitate to get me in touch with me, and we can have further conversations. Thank you. Thanks, Eric. Joe.
Boy, I've been yakking a lot tonight. I'm sorry about that. Barry's going, yes, you
Normal,
are.
Joe.
No, it isn't. Stop it. Okay. No, actually, Cindy, in regards to the hearing impaired or deaf, Chief, I'm going to throw a name at you real quick. Raymond Toll, Toll. That goes back close to probably 20 years or so or more, that there was a action taken against the city, and that there was a work plan specifically from that case on where the city was supposed to go with that as far as training is concerned. And that may have been, over the years, may have been lost in the shuffles, in the multiple shuffles since you've started. I mean, this is way back. So I don't know if that is things that have occurred back then and have been put into place, or if they need to definitely need to be brought up to date. But that was actually a Springfield case that I think rose to the state level. But that's probably a great starting point for you.
I think that what Joe's referring to is this policy that's came out of the Raymond Toll case that I have on the screen, 54.30. And there's some requirements for training for the department and types of auxiliary aids and services.
Right.
I can email that to you, Cindy, if you'd like.
It was pretty complete,
that'd be
if I
great.
recall. Yeah, it was, if I recall, it's pretty, actually quite complete.
Yeah, and there's down here somewhere, there's a section on training all department members. We'll have to go through this. So yeah, I can send that. I don't know if everybody wants it, or I can just send it to Cindy.
Did that include, Tiffany, does that include the new cell phone usage?
The policy was put in place before we did smartphones, but it talks about that type electronics and notepad or like iPads and different types of electronics. So I would think that'd be included.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that one of the the VRI services, I have to check my phone and see if that's one that we put. I know that we have it on the iPads that we have in records and over at the jail. But I can't remember if that's one we put on the smartphone, so I'll have to look through the apps. And I can have IT add whatever we need.
Great. Thanks, Tiffany.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Okay, well, I appreciate everybody's time tonight. Thank you. And we'll see you in March. So meeting is adjourned. It is now 6:52 p.m. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
And actually, our next meeting isn't until April.
April.
Yeah, we're every 2 months now, remember?
Oh, this is February, isn't it?
Yeah,
April, thank you.
yes.
Okay, good night.
Hi, good night.
Good night.